this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketchiate, and it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.
Hello and welcome to not another Arsenal podcast, aka the Carlos Jenkinson of Arsenal podcast. My name is Mike Hers, your host.
Carlos Jenkins.
Did I do it wrong again?
You Latin X'd his first name.
I next his first name. Carl. I missed the international break already. Welcome back, boys. We're going to try to chat a little bit, catch up on the Arsenal. We're smoothing things over a lot better than when the international break started, because Lord knows we weren't happy during the international break because of how Arsenal were looking, how things were looking in the table. And it's funny. We're still 9 points away from Liverpool, but things are looking a little bit more optimistic. It's funny what a boatload of goals could do for your mood, isn't it? As a fan, it's just kind of nice thing to see. As always, first and foremost, the introductions. Chris, welcome back, dude.
It's so nice to see, Mike. I pulled out the good stuff tonight. I got the Celebrator Doppelbach, which I know Kelly's a fan of. I'm back to bantering random fans on Twitter. I mean, life is good. I mean, I wasn't doing that last couple of weeks because, I might be stupid, but I'm not stupid enough to banter people when we suck. So now that we're good again, I found my voice again, and I'm back at it. So
I like that you're very self-aware of what you're doing, because I do see some like people bantering, like, like last season. I'm like, dude, you're a Chelsea fan. You're like a mid-table team. Why are you talking about shit right now? So you're at least very well aware of like our position in the table and how results are going. So you're like, okay, rival fans have too much ammo to toss my way, so I'm just gonna sit this week out. You just
totally
play possum. Let them think you're dead and come back with vengeance. I like it. Kelly, what are you drinking tonight, sir?
I'm drinking my patented Durley's 12-year rum, which, again, I understand that I'm not a 15th century pirate, but rum has been my drink of choice for a while. So, yeah, and we're gonna finish this bottle tonight because, oh boy, this has been a fun couple days, and it feels like we got our Arsenal back after it being gone for a really short period of time. And a lot of other bad things are happening to the bad clubs too that we can laugh at, which I'm sure we will. I have not seen the highlights of that match yet. I considered watching the entire second half in full, the Manchester City's epic collapse against what Dutch team?
Feyenoord.
Feyenoord, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other Timbers revenge over there at Feyenoord, but like, man, Pep Guardiola is having meltdowns in press conferences. Like, this is delicious stuff. Like, this is quite good. We haven't been able to laugh quite this hard at their expense in a while. So let's
in a while, like forever. Record breaking, right? What was the stat floating around?
like
no team has ever been leading 3-0 within 75 minutes of the game and still not managed to win the game. So
yeah, in Champions League history.
Pretty impressive, to be honest. So when they do bad, they do bad.
Record setters, guys. Record setters.
I will say, like, there was a picture circulating, and like people just taking the shit out of Guardiola, and it's just a still frame, right? And he's all scratched up. It looked like he got in a fight with a fucking feral cat. And this entire time, I'm thinking, it's just like, I'm like, who photoshopped this shit, like, to make him look like he's beat up because of the last month that he's had? And then I see a video, and it's literally him clawing at himself when the 3-3 goal went in, and he managed to like straight up cut his nose. And I'm like, holy shit, he genuinely lost it. So yeah, I mean, hey, good times, as you said, good times, dude. Yeah,
he should have some Durley's 12-year and calm the fuck down. It's worth like $500 million. I think you'll be fine, man.
Well, I won't be drinking with you guys, not for any particular reason, but I was just telling you guys pre-pod that I couldn't entirely explain to you why I just stopped buying beer to have at the house. So maybe it was Sebi. Maybe Sebi made me want to drink. You know,
Maybe it was Sebi's fault. Blame the guy who doesn't come on the pod
Yeah.
anymore.
Sebi makes me
That's
want
my
to keep up with him because he's an hour ahead of us and like 2 hours ahead of you, Mike, or 3 hours ahead of you, Mikey. So he'd always be like 4 beers deep when we started. So it's like, I think he's the reason why I switched from beer to hard liquor on these things. We only
That makes
catch up by
perfect
the end
sense
of
if you think about it. Yeah. All right, let's chat a little bit, man. So we didn't have the opportunity to chat about the Chelsea game. Odegaard and Rice did make an appearance on that game. Epic in the sense that both coming back from an injury. Declan Rice with a broken toe. Odegaard's been nursing an injury for a few months now, and they both put in an 80, 90-minute shift. Professionalism to the max. And, we often like to say Arteta player. And, I mean, it's peak Arteta player. And it's amazing what two players that weren't fully fit could do to the mood of the fan base and the performance of a team, because it was kind of night and day. I fully take on board that it ended 2-2. We didn't win that game, but the vibes, if you will, was completely different. So we go into an international break. We're 9 points clear from Liverpool. And then we arrived to the first game that we're going to chat about just slightly. We're not go goal for goal because as I alluded to, they scored 8 goals these last 2 games. So we might be here a while if we take the time to talk about all of them. But
1 hour per goal. Let's go.
1 hour per goal. Avadeo's music to Avadeo's ears for sure. I do want to take the time because as I like to say, there's a few cliches in football that I'm not a big fan of, and one of them is he got the starting lineup wrong. And I think it's safe to say, Chris, at the beginning of this Nottingham Forest game, when the starting lineup was announced, I think all of us had a "what is he doing" moment. I truly believe that. I don't know. I mean, I'll let you speak on it, but like, what was your interpretation when you saw Jorginho rise from the dead, play Gabriel Jesus starting the game of football, Martinelli not starting the game of football, and we're all just kind of wondering what exactly is going on? We could kind of justify Declan Rice because, like, okay, he's potentially still nursing a toe injury, right? But it was far more rotation than I think the majority of the fan base was prepared to see. So what did that do to set the mood coming back from an international break? And were you excited about the changes, relieved about the changes, or pissing yourself?
I remember having an inner monologue when I saw the starting lineup come out, and I wanted to have a knee-jerk reaction and jump on Twitter and say something. I was like, no, I want to be mature this time, which is rare for me, and take a step back and try to put myself in Arteta's shoes and say what's happening here. And I actually tweeted this. You all can go back and look at the receipts. It's on my timeline. But I said it's one of 3 things that are happening here. A, it's an evolution in how Arteta wants to play, and he wants to try out a few different combinations, and maybe the players he puts on the pitch are able to maybe carry out his ideas better than the ones that are being rested. Great. 2, we have a Champions League game midweek, and he thinks he can win this game with a rotated squad so that he can rest some guys that desperately needed rest. Kai Havertz, Declan Rice included in that, as you said, Mike. And C, he's gone galaxy brain because he had 2 weeks to think about this game and he overthought it. And I didn't think it was C, although I always know that that's a possibility when, you give a guy like a tactical guy like Arteta enough time to think about something, there's always the risk that he's going to overthink it and do something silly because he needs to get a result. What I think was proven by the end of the game was that really, I think it was the majority of B, which was that I think he saw a squad, a group of players that largely didn't go on international break because they were injured, and a team that desperately needed as much rest as they could, because we're starting to get into this situation where we're going to have 2 to 3 games a week for the foreseeable future. And so you can't trot out guys, as we've seen this year, you can't trot out guys over and over again when they're tired and expect them to produce results. So I try to be measured, Mike. To answer your question, I tried to stay sane when I saw it. I was worried that it wasn't going to be enough given the form that Nottingham Forest was in. But obviously our concerns were unfounded because we looked really dominant in that game for the first time in a long time. So Yeah, I think I was most worried about. I'm trying to think back to who was on the pitch that day, but I think Jesus being a guy that's way out of form up top, and us needing to score goals, was I think probably my biggest concern. I've always been a kind of a Jorginho guy at the base of the midfield. I think as long as you're not asking him to run back toward his own goal, he's really good on the ball, and he's disciplined and he's a leader. So he gives you a lot in that position. So I really wasn't too worried about him. It was more of, can we score goals with that team on the pitch? And I think, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, having Odegaard back in the squad, man, has just changed everything. So I won't steal the thunder. I'll let you keep asking the questions, Mike. But that was my thoughts pregame.
Oh, fair enough. This is also Mark's in one of the positions. The first game of a potential maybe 2 months without Ben White. Now, we're not completely free with the bad news, so to say, when it comes to injuries, because shortly before the first Nottingham Forest game popped up, Kelly, we find out that we were told about Ben White halfway through, but then we were told that somehow Tomiyasu miraculously has not been fully fit yet, and he's nursing this injury, which seems like forever. Right? Has he played a game this season? I mean, I'm side noting my own discussion here, but I truly can't remember if he played a game this season.
May have played a cup game.
May have played a cup game. Okay, so Tomiyasu gets out of injury, and it seems like the pieces of the defense are just coming back slowly and sturdy, right? And they all come back at a perfect timing, because we get the uptick about Calafiori coming back into play, and so you start thinking, okay, Timber, he's been doing great at left back. He's going to move to right back. And I mean, I want to talk about Timber just for a little bit, and maybe we could talk about him in the sense of the both games, Kelly. Mm-hmm. But he's such a freaking freak of nature. He does this body feint thing that seemingly always sends his opponents to go grab a snow cone, and his form doesn't dip at all. Either he's playing on the left back or right back. Mm-hmm. I'm incredibly impressed with this guy, and I'm also incredibly impressed with Calafiori. The fact that this is his first season in the league, and he's just doing absolutely fantastic. But how are we looking on fullbacks, man? I mean, pending, knock on wood, they stay healthy. I mean, is it smooth sailing for the next 2 months prior to Ben White coming back?
Strangely enough, I think left back is far less of a concern. Now that I think Calafiori is the nailed on starter preferred. I think even in a situation where it's unless we would be overtly defensive, I think Timber is kind of slotting in as the pseudo defensive stopper on a inverted winger on that side. But really that's Tomiyasu's role, should he care to play football ever again for the rest of his life. The good thing about Timber is so Ben White does a lot of his damage. He'll kind of put his foot on the ball and pass like a center back, but he'll overlap and run and do a lot of byline runs and clear space for Saka. And I think that's probably optimal, because it means that Odegaard doesn't have to spend quite as much time lacing together that pocket there. But with White out and him obviously dealing with a knee thing for basically the last year, we saw fewer and fewer overlaps, and some of that physical dynamism was a big part of him. I would say last year was probably the best right back in the country. Has been not as strong, or something that's as infrequent, because he just can't do it and wasn't training enough to have that physicality. So Timber stepped in. He plays the role a little bit different. He plays it a little bit like a center back, a little bit like a central midfielder, and a little bit like an attacking wing back. And you can see that. I mean, I think it's probably a credit to Odegaard and Saka, but they dominated that pod. That cohort dominated this game. Everything went through there. They interchanged beautifully at one touch, overlaps, pulling it back, going over the top. We saw him thread a great assist, just a daisy cutter assist that got between the defenders and the goalkeeper, and it allowed. I mean, in the game today, I think it's something where Timber not having to play on his wrong foot, which is great for him defensively, but is less natural with ball progression and dribbling. We're seeing what he looks like playing in that kind of, again, he doesn't do it the same way, but similar thing that Ben White does, where you're playing right back, right center back, and central midfield simultaneously.
And sometimes right wing. Yeah.
And sometimes right wing, right? and all that coalesces with the existing talent and what Havertz and Saka and Odegaard do. It looks like an absolutely seamless fit. And I would say with fullback too, but I suppose before I get to that, right back is a concern though, because I mean Timber's our only fit senior right back right now. That's a big problem, and Calafiori is a lot worse at playing right back than Timber is at playing left back. So Calafiori playing there should be a break glass in case of emergency thing. So unfortunately, I do think that we are likely to see Thomas Partey playing right back when Timber cannot or needs to rotate. And that fundamentally changes how we play, because he's basically Partey is playing as a central midfielder, playing right back, like spot starting right back. He's not playing right back in a way that we want to. So I think my speculation is that when we need to rotate out, it's going to just be Partey's going to play there, and we're going to change how we attack a little bit and change kind of a little bit of the system and understand that he's going to be sitting back an awful lot. And it is what it is. He's played well there at times, but it's not ideal. And it really is important that Timber does not get any soft tissue injuries, and we try to manage him as best we can. Again, left back, I feel pretty comfortable. Calafiori looked really good today. He looks his depth, his downsides are his downsides, which is he gets caught fishing on the touch line sometimes, especially early in the game when he's jacked up. He sometimes doesn't get the balance between attacking, gambling on the attack, and having minding his defensive responsibilities. But he's obviously encouraged to do that, given that he has Gabriel and Saliba behind him. And in theory, that front line of Sporting today was a hell of a litmus test of how we can recover into space, because like their right winger, their 17-year-old kid is fucking awesome. God, is that kid fast and smart, and a good defender. Like he's an outstanding. Like I had known vaguely of what his name is. Queta.
Yeah, so I think it's a Q, but it's Queta, I think.
Yeah, Queta. Really, really a good player. Really tuned in, and he got behind Calafiori some, but not a ton. And again, we have basically the hottest prospect, the highest scorer in the world by a distance right now. And he tried to run into that channel, and he didn't really get any sort of change behind Calafiori and with Gabriel there. So, I mean, I think from the first, and then, I mean, Zinchenko is playing now too, and Skelly's there. I think they're a body. Kivior can play there. Left back is okay. The depth is really good. Maybe until Calafiori gets all the way back to like form, it's not the greatest spot. Right back is Timber is like perfect for what we're doing right now, but there's nobody behind him. So I think we need to manage that situation well. Although he's not cramping up and coming off anymore, which is what he was doing at the beginning of the year. So I think he's probably in a good, obviously form is great and his fitness is clearly good too, or is improving. But the problem is when we're playing, as you guys have said, we're playing 3 times a week. So he can't play 390s every week unless he's going to fundamentally change how he plays that. Unless he's going to run around like the Sporting central midfield with the Arsenal tattoo that didn't take a hard step the whole fucking game and just walked the pitch, which you can't do with Arteta, obviously.
You know, the other thing that having Timber in the squad is doing is it's allowing Saka to play just that little bit farther forward in defense. He doesn't have to defend his corner flag, and so it puts less miles on Saka's legs. It puts less collisions in Saka's body, and it also allows Saka to receive the ball higher up the pitch when we transition. So I think he's doing a ton of jobs for us, not just on the defensive side, but also in attack. I mean, his assist today was excellent. He's making decisions in the final third that, you know, most fullbacks don't make, and they're good decisions. He makes great runs. I saw him playing a lot in the wing today in the final third, and Saka playing centrally. And I think that's actually really good, because if we can get Saka the ball in central areas more often, there's less distance he needs to cover with the ball in order to get in a position to shoot off his left foot. And we know how that goes with that goal that he scored at Nottingham Forest. Off his left, where he had to do a ton of work. And Odegaard did a good job of getting the ball in the box, but he had to do a ton of work to get the ball off his foot. But that's, you know, I think less of a problem typically. The problem is typically getting him from the touchline on the far right wing into a position where he can shoot. And so the more we can get him the ball while he's already central, the better off he is. So
what do we think we do at right back without, like, if we're in I suppose we're less concerned about the League Cup, or like, what do we do because Timber's going to have to rotate out, and Party is the starting 6. So like it can't be like Party's playing 3 times a week.
That's literally what I was looking at right now at our fixture list, because I know that I want to say that we had like an Everton game coming up, but I got them confused with Liverpool. And so we're away at West Ham. You know, they're up and down on form. Then we got at home versus United. I don't think that's going to be optimal. So potentially West Ham, potentially Fulham away, depending on how we're looking. But I was just looking at the fixture list, and as you were talking, I'm like, okay, so who's going to be the backup? Because, you know, Zinchenko's playing left back as well. He's starting to come into the fold. Lewis Skelly is an option. I started thinking Kivior might play a minute or two. I mean very little, because he always seems to start Gabriel and Saliba. By the way, because you slightly brought up Gyokeres, the funniest shit that I read today was, I can't believe that they're airing the abuse that Saliba and Gabriel, or they're airing what Saliba and Gabriel are doing to Gyokeres today. Like they're televising it. I just thought it was really funny. But in the middle of the fullback conversation, you know what I generally thought, oh yeah, okay, this starting to make sense why Jorginho came out of nowhere and started playing a few minutes, because they're probably getting him physically capable and ready to play a few 90 minutes. And Partey, who was rested a little bit, at midweek or on the weekend because of the league game, I think we're gonna continue to see Partey at right back eventually, guys. And I know that's not something that anybody is happy about. And
the solution was right under our nose today in the stands. I mean,
you couldn't help it, huh, Chris?
This guy, I mean, come on. He's looking for a job. He looks like, he's come off the set of Peaky Blinders. I mean,
it's just like a very fancy
guys.
He's a very fancy boy today. Very fancy.
Is he still a free agent?
Sure.
It's called involuntary retirement when you're a footballer, Mike. Like that's what that is. He's not a free agent.
Is if we sign him, it's still technically like a new signing.
He's the equivalent of the 55-year-old at a corporation that gets pushed out of his job and given a severance package because they just don't want him to work there anymore. So
as we've said many times,
you could bring an ex-Arsenal right back in on loan in January.
Bellerin.
Cedric, Bellerin, or Debuchy. Who are you bringing?
Debuchy's like 40 years old, I think.
Just bring one. Bring one back in their prime. Whatever.
How about Carlos Jenkinson?
Hey, Carlos Jenkinson is solid too.
Jenkinson.
Whoever in their prime, if they had a prime, go ahead, shoot. Who would you bring back?
I didn't know. I don't know who you said.
Bellerin, Cedric Suarez, or Debuchy in their prime.
Debuchy.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, he was actually solid prior to somebody shoving him into a postal.
Bellerin would like sit down halfway through the match and start lecturing us about geopolitics and fashion instead of running back.
That's fair. Okay, he's gonna bore the people into submission, and they won't want to.
Yeah, the left winger just slowly just goes, I got something else going on, man. I gotta go. Ring. Oh man.
So that's my solution to right back. Chris, do you see any? I mean, surely Timber can't play every single game that's gonna come back. So is it safe to say Jorginho plays at the base, and once again Partey plays at right back?
I don't know that there's going to be one single solution as a backup. I think we might see Calafiori at times. I think we might see Partey probably more often than not. I think there's going to be some cases where we're going to need and want Partey, though, to be at the base of the midfield because of what he brings us from a receiving the ball standpoint, from a progressive passing standpoint. And I know he plays that right back inverted, but I don't love when he's isolated 1v1 against a winger. He did well against whoever it was recently that we were all worried about, but I don't know that that's sustainable. So I think
Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
He had a really good
Liverpool. Yeah, against
he had a really good game.
Yes, yeah. I think you're right. I don't know. I think we're going to see a number of options play there. But I think Partey's probably the guy that we'll see most often backing up that position.
Yeah, and just because you mentioned Calafiori, am I dreaming this up? Did he play right back versus City? Like a period of that game? Am I wrong? It was Skelly ended up at left back.
Yeah, I think that's right. Towards the end, he played on the right hand side. I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah.
We were all together, Mike. Come on,
we were all together. Yeah. It was a good atmosphere, as I recall. Hey, Kelly got a refill.
Yeah.
Speaking about my favorite my favorite hobby horse, that is Thomas Partey scoring a goal, a nice goal. You know, they don't come off too often, but when he scores, he scores. The second goal versus Forest, it was a beaut. I have to ask, because I know. So I have this unpopular opinion in which I believe Mikel Arteta sees Declan Rice as a 8 more than a 6. And I don't know if it's just the squad that he has, but more often than not, if you guys have noticed, I mean, Partey's available. Partey plays at 6, and Declan Rice is the one that's playing at 8. We've never seen it any other way. I mean, even when am I wrong to say Merino played 6 and Rice played 8 when this past game as well? Was it
Nottingham Forest?
No, I'm thinking about Chelsea. I'll go back and look at the starting lineup right now.
Yeah. On the party thing, if I could jump in, dude, he is feeling it. Like, some of the shit that he was doing today is somebody who is walking around like he's 8 feet tall. Like,
playing for a contract.
He's definitely playing for a contract because he's a cynical fucker. But, like, if we can squeeze the last elite football out of Party this year and then watch him and his, like, rucksack of issues go away, I think everybody will probably be fine. But like, dude, he was like, some of the small space shit he did, it was ridiculous. Like, the kind of like feints and like like, dude, he had like maybe one giveaway the whole game. Otherwise, he absolutely crushed them. The thing that he does do that drives me fucking crazy, though, is when they have possession against us in our defensive third, he sucks into the back line way too much, and so there's nobody at the top of the box. And like, that's the only he did nothing wrong on the ball. Not a lot wrong off the ball except for that. And Raya had 2 like beautiful stops on really nice curling efforts from the top of the 18. Yep. That Party should probably buy him a beer for after the match, because and again, that was the Chelsea game too. The reason why, geez, my printer's deciding now is a good time to test itself as loudly as humanly possible. But like, in the Chelsea match, the reason why that we gave up the goal is that Party sprinted back and was defending on the back line, and it's not instead of in the midfield, instead of shielding the defenders. And it's something that whoever plays that position next, whether it's going to be Declan Rice moving there, or Marino, or whatever, we get somebody else, here's my bet, my weird kind of like deep tactical bet. That player never does that, because I think that's something that Mikel Arteta would love for Thomas Partey to never do again. But it's something that Thomas Partey really wants to do, and so he's going to keep doing it because he's like 31 years old and he's not going to change his patterns now. But like,
what are you going to do? Not offer me a contract?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see which Saudi Arabian team he plays for next year. But I will say though, like, if you can go to Saudi, good on him, because like, holy Christ, I think I posted this. I looked up. I was like, man, Riyad Mahrez kind of went to Saudi early. Like, he had a couple good years left. And I looked him up, like, non-tax, he almost makes like $900,000 a week.
He's doing okay. He's hanging in there.
Jesus H, $900,000 a week. It's like 3 times what Havertz makes to play in front of like dozens of people.
Jesus Christ. That I mean, when you put it like that, Jesus, man.
And without the taxes that you have in the UK.
No taxes. And I think don't they house them too? Like, probably. They basically like
put them in one of the old palaces.
Yeah, no, she just got them knocking around all over the place.
Again, guys, I don't think I could fault any player for even the young ones. Isn't there like this Spanish starlet that everybody wanted from Celta de Vigo? Vega?
Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah, Vega went there, didn't he?
He had, like, do you remember them trolling? Do you remember them trolling Napoli when they announced them? Because Napoli, like, it was all but confirmed, and like the official whatever team he ended up at, like they like started putting pictures of him up just like on like slap soup, like pow pow pow, and one of the pictures was him in a Napoli kit, just like taking the piss out of them. Yeah, just like it was absolutely great on that end.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to blame him, because I think he went there as like, yeah, he was at Celta Vigo making about $40,000 a week or $30,000 a week, and then he 15 times it. He makes like a $500,000 a week in Saudi now. And I think a lot of those guys too. I'm sorry, this is totally a Kelly tangent too, but like, it is wild how much, like, I think the Saudi League is paying ESPN to try to put them on there, because like on the banners of ESPN in the US, on the soccer page, football page, sorry, like they'll have the bullet points and they'll be like El Ha Wah 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 beats blah blah blah
Word
and
for word.
showdowns. Like, what the who fucking cares? Like, I can't even watch this on TV, and you couldn't pay me to watch it if I could. Like, they could probably pay me to watch it, but like anybody who's out there, Saudi, like oil state, you want to pay me money to tweet about it? I probably would. I'm not that principled, but like, it's just like them forcing it in there, and they like won't say anything about Italy, like the Italian domestic league or something. That's having one of the best title races like in their history. It's a fucking blast. But no, we're talking about like Ronaldo scores again against FC buttfuck that nobody cares. Like nobody cares about that league at all.
Ronaldo's going to be the first to hit 1,000 goals, huh?
But if it's like a tree falling in the woods, if there's nobody around to see it, did it even happen? Like, come on.
Okay, so this sounds really PL elitish, if you will, but and Chris mentioned this as well as far as Messi goes, and Chris, as you guys know, is a big Messi fan. They lost a lot of shine, like when he went to PSG. Everybody like. I think a large amount of like football supporters that don't exclusively follow him because it's him, were like, oh yeah, fuck, I forgot he still plays, and it's kind of the same thing with Ronaldo. So like, I'll be honest, man. Like every time like I see like, oh look at this brilliant goal Messi scored in the MLS or Ronaldo, and I'm like, we're still talking about this? Like why? Yeah, why are we doing this right now? So like, I don't know, like. Both brilliant unique players, but I think they lost a little bit of shine by going these type of leagues.
It's unique to football because European football, because in the States here, when you're not good enough and you're too old to play, you just retire, because where else are you going to go if you're retiring from baseball, you're retiring from basketball, you're retiring from American football? There's nowhere else to go. So you go into the broadcast booth, or you go in, get your go coach at the grassroots level, or you have enough money, you don't need to do anything else like Tom Brady. But that's the problem in football, is there's always a lesser league you can go to if you're willing to take a pay cut. In most cases, obviously Messi and Ronaldo are getting paid as much as they ever have been, but they're, I think, the outlier more than the rule. So it's unique to this sport, I think.
You can keep going down the leagues and going into different countries. And like, I always love those, the footballer like Instagram accounts. So it'll be like, you remember this person, they're 38 years old and still playing here. And I actually think that's very cool, because like a lot of the guys say they're not making any money anymore, but it's like, they can make some money and they get to keep playing. Like, you get to keep playing a game for a living. Like, who's the, was it James McLean is playing at Wrexham right now, and he played a ton of minutes in he was in the Premier League with Stoke when they were like a mid-level Premier League team. Like, he's played hundreds of matches in the Premier League and like even more in the Championship, and he's playing at that level. And like Arthur Nkonkwo on the other side of that too, the old Arsenal Academy guys playing there too. Like, these good players can hook on to like a team like Wrexham that's basically like a low-level team that's like a media conglomerate to expand their brand and make more money than they would playing at that level, and they just go and just bully people in these like shitty divisions. But yeah, I think football will, as long as your body and brain will allow you to keep playing, they will find a spot for you to play somewhere. And like, remember how a bunch of the guys from like the 90s stars were like playing in the Indian Premier League when India tried to like pump in and bring in a bunch of like also ran old guys, and they did that for a couple of years before they quit. Like, you can see like a bunch of people like played for Mumbai when they were like in their very late 30s to cash a paycheck and keep playing ball. And football is weird. Yeah, this is actually a good
as you're speaking, Chris and I were you could just hear our keyboards just trying to figure out random facts about shit, because like I Google. So a few things came to mind, Kelly. Podolski retired at 39. Right. So,
he was playing central midfield in Japan. He was literally playing as an interior midfielder in Japan.
And then another guy that I was thinking about was Carroll. First name Andy? Yeah, Andy Carroll, who is 35, still going, but he's playing for Bordeaux.
He's playing the French second tier, right?
Yeah, there you go. Where's Sebi when you need him to tell me I completely butched that, by the way, Bordeaux.
No, Bordeaux's right. You're good, buddy.
Before we go back to the Arsenal, just real quick, the panel of the Champions League who has the I'm forgetting the woman's name, Henri, Carragher, Micah, and
Oh,
Abdo.
Kate Abdo.
Yeah.
The whole discussion revolving them and Brest.
Oh, that was hilarious.
I gotta say, man, they are extraordinarily entertaining, to say the very least. And I gotta say, Micah has to be one of my most favored, personalities on the phone. And my co-host,
like such a sweetheart of a guy, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely!
Like such a funny, nice man.
You kind of want to just have a beer from him. Chris, I just noticed that you're reining us in right now in the private chat that I forgot that we were talking about the Arsenal. So that's actually a really good point.
We haven't talked in a while.
We haven't talked in a while. Yes, this is
what we would do if we were all hanging out in the bar. I mean,
this is what international football should be. Okay,
this is what we did for like 50 consecutive hours when we went to Premier League Fan Fest. We got pissed on with rain. And then we had this conversation from Friday night through Sunday morning.
Let's bring this back to the Arsenal. Chris, how close is Mikel Merino going to come without scoring a goal without scoring a goal? Because he seems to always be at the end of some fantastic header. Today I really thought his shot from the outside was going to go in. And what can you tell me to convince me? Give me numbers here, Chris. I'm going to give you a challenge and entertain me for the sake of it. I still see him more of a defensive player than an offensive player. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maybe I'm falling victim of the whole body, figure that he has. Like he's just so tall. He's so strong, and maybe I just can't look at him and think, oh yeah, technically able player, but every time I see him, I'm like, you belong on the base, dude. You're only not at the base because Park is at the club, but he does find himself in good positions.
He's such an interesting player because he's Spanish, and you have a vision of what a Spanish midfielder plays like, right? You've got Xavi, Iniesta, Fabregas. Pick your favorite Spanish midfielder, and you have a vision of it. And he doesn't fit that mold. He's big, he's tall, he's physical. I think he's more of a box to box than anything else. I think he can play a little bit of 6, a little bit of 8. I think he's best when he's kind of partnered in a 2 out of possession, but also can make the run from box to box, when we're in possession. He seems to be getting on the end of a lot of opportunities, which is a good sign because it means he knows where to sit and where to find space and where to attack the ball. I think he's a menace on set pieces because he's really good in the air. I think he's going to score goals eventually. I think we're going to see a season not too long from now, a lot like Declan Rice's last year, something like 6, 7, 8 goals from midfield. He just has to get a run of games where he's settled in the position, isn't injured, and knows his role. And I think he's figuring that out. I think every game he plays, he looks more sturdy and solid and part of the group than he did when he first arrived. I mean, I think we were all kind of going, who is this guy when he first arrived? And we were all going, I'm not sure Mikel Arteta bought the right player. I mean, we were all saying that. Then, when he first came back from injury, but I think, Kelly was one of those. But I think as he gets more and more time on the pitch and we get more of our first 11 guys, Odegaard's making everybody look better. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, he's a massive level raiser for everybody.
He's
totally
kind of good at football.
He's kind of good, but I think the more he's got a settled role in the squad with settled players around him, I think his quality is just gonna become evident. So I'd expect him to continue to look better as the season progresses, even beyond today or beyond the last few games. And I think he's serviceable. I'm not sure he's a player I'll ever love. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Just not my style, but I think he serves a role that we need in that position, in that part of the pitch. And if he can contribute, 5, 6, 7 plus goals, I'll take it. Because I remember seasons not too long ago, guys. We would podcast and we would lament how few goals we were getting from midfield. I remember us saying, I think one year we got less than 5 from midfield. And we were like, this can't continue. Now we've got Odegaard, Partey, Rice, Merino, Waneri, if you want to include him, which we probably should. And we'll probably talk about him as well. I think between those 5 guys, we're going to be getting routinely 20 plus goals a season. So it's fun. Strap in, enjoy the ride. Love to see it from midfield.
Absolutely. Now, Gully, let's talk a little bit about Odegaard. Chris mentioned him and talk about a level raiser. I was thinking about this. I was thinking we had a lot of conversations regarding we all felt the absence of Odegaard. We all say, but the conversation became, are we too dependent on him? But then I started thinking, yeah, it's kind of a shitty way to think, because like Liverpool's 100% dependent on Salah, right?
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. Like
They're
they
fucked
need
if he's
him,
not there. Fucked.
right? Like and to an extent, whenever Haaland wants to like be humble, and remembers how to score goals, and
We'll get to them.
I'm sure like without him, this situation, I say this situation could be bad, and I'm aware that they haven't. Again, fun stat is San Marino has won more games of football in the month of November than City has. Fun little stat, of course, but he is such an important player, and I think Mikel Arteta said this either earlier on in the season or late last season, in which he said like pretty much everything goes through him, and it's just genuinely amazing how just having him on the pitch has vastly improved the entirety of the right side. And Bukayo Saka spoke about him after today's game and said that he missed him and that he loves having him. It was a good partnership. He gave a brilliant pass for Saka to open up. I think it was the first of the one with Forest, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the first one. He gave a beautiful pass. I was having the discussion. I do think that Saka had to do a little bit of extra work, so it wasn't as, it wasn't a tap-in type of assist, but he's finding the passes inside the box into the final third that we just simply 100% do not have when he's not on the pitch. Yeah. So let's talk about Odegaard a little bit. Brilliant performance versus Forest. You could see it. Brilliant performance versus Sporting. And this is what I said on TGP when I was over there just a few days ago, where it's insane that just by the fact that we're turning over opponents and creating shots, going into the international break, I was disappointed with the season. We were 9 points away from Liverpool. And after the Forest game, we were still 9 points away from Liverpool. But it just completely changed my perspective. And I'm like completely more positive of the outlook of the season. So maybe I'm taking crazy pills, or maybe it's just simply the Odegaard effect. So what say you, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think he offers something that nobody else in the squad can do, maybe besides Wanyeri. And I think, and this has been observed on other podcasts, but we kind of changed our style of play to survive the Odegaard absence instead of trying to play the same way with Wanyeri or somebody else or Trossard trying to pretend to be Odegaard. And that's just one of those things where I think we maybe leaned too far into other stuff and played too far on the margins, and we kind of came on the low side of those margins. But I think it's just one of those things where he's an irreplaceable. The same way, like we talk about Mo Salah, we talk about Rodri, we talk about, Aston Villa is getting the Emery effect now. I mean, like those three are like firmly ensconced. I think are still, despite our table position, are clearly the three best teams. Like, it fundamentally changes how you play when you remove this one person, and it's I think it's in a really direct and obvious way. It's the type of passes, the urgency, the tempo chase, like how the tempo quickens. Like I remember I was watching the game today, and my observation that I was thinking is that like you rarely find somebody who moves that frenetically under that much control. Even like really, really elite footballers a lot of times are like Haaland is like one cut, incredibly decisive, power, like straight line power. And then other guys are like, they're almost like kind of how Santi Cazorla would like look like he was doing like, he was in like a mid gear and would just dribble through everybody because he was going so slow and he had such good control of the ball. It didn't matter how fast he was going. Odegaard is like frantic, like an ADHD kid, but he has total control of what is happening and he's just like, it's like watching a normal attacking midfielder on like 125% speed. He just moves so quickly and with such urgency, and he like forces you to keep up. And another thing too that I always forget when he's not there, he coaches the entire time when he's on the pitch. He is waving and shouting and moving players around, and Magalhaes does not listen to a ton of players talk. He goes and will listen to Odegaard when he's a line ahead of him during the match. Away at Sporting in a 50,000 seat venue where they're all screaming at you, he will go and listen to him, and in where Odegaard's pointing, that's where he plays the ball to do build up. Like, I think when players like that impact you from a tactical perspective, from a like team spirit perspective, who organizes the press and organizes the attacking tempo, when those guys aren't there, it's not that Arsenal stink because they don't have an analog. It's because there is no analog. We might not be able to go anywhere else in the world and find an analog for him.
I like that.
To do all that stuff. There's just nobody else that can play there. And with players like that, you just have to ride it, right? If they're there, your outcome range is far closer to the positive outcome range, end of your ranges, rather than when he's not there. And it's that simple. And he's one of the very best players in the world. And not only is he one of the very best players in the world, he's an incredibly strong fit for the players we have and the manager we have. And that means that, like, kind of similar to Saka, and I think similar to like Gabriel and Saliba, like if they're not there, there's nothing that you can do. The level will drop, and the level will drop in a couple different ways. And it's just it's one of those things that remember, like when we first started this podcast, how frustrating it was that we like basically had no world-class players or elite players at any position anywhere on the pitch. And so we were kind of like clinking around with these like 4 and 5 and 6 out of 10s and like trying to like cajole ourselves into thinking that they were going to be these big difference makers. Like, no. That take Odegaard out, everything else stays the same, and that team is fighting for top 4, and you put him in there, and now all of a sudden is a team that
fights for the title.
Yeah, is fighting for the title and doing deep runs in the Champions League because of that one guy. And that's how sometimes football is having all the good players and having them play really well and having them do things for your team and against and 2 other teams that there's no alternative for. You just like so Sporting there, like, what do? It's like, this guy is the best player on the pitch and he's fucking killing us and we can't do anything about it. So we just need to try to survive it. And they did. They died.
I noted in our back channel that everybody moves with more conviction and more certainty and just moves more in general when he's on the pitch because they know he's got the creativity, the vision, and the technical execution to be able to pull off a pass to their feet when they make those moves. I just think it's been night and day obvious when he's been on the pitch how much more fluid we look at the top end of the pitch in the final third. And I think that's a big reason why we're getting so many more chances. It's not only because Odegaard is creative, it's because guys are willing to make those runs and move in the way that they do, in ways and in intensity and with conviction that they don't do when he's not on the pitch. Because if you've ever played football, I've ever played any kind of sport where, you know, you have to exert a lot of energy to do well, you eventually lose the motivation or the conviction to make those runs when you don't think the players around you can get you the ball. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, whether it's conscious or non-conscious, I think when Odegaard's out there, everybody's running because they know that Odegaard will attempt to find them. And if the pass is on, he'll get it there. So I don't know. I think that's a lot of what's fixed, what's going on in the top end of the pitch is just his presence on the pitch makes everybody work better, more efficiently, harder, because he's excellent at what he does in all facets.
Is this what the young people on Twitter call aura? Is that what we're talking about? And I say that, you know, tongue in cheek, but from me being a guy that was doubtful of having Ethan Nwaneri be the backup to Odegaard, I was very vocal at the beginning of the season, at the end of the transfer window about this. I'm growing to love the player more and more. He looks super mature. He looks like he belongs. I won't go as far to say he's Udegaard's level, but I do think I am considerably more convinced that he could start a game of football. And the times and the state of the state of the games in which he's coming in matter, of course. Although he has come in, and I think it was like Leicester City. We were trailing more or less, or he came in and had a really big performance. Question here is with all his talent in the world that he has, do you think it's still kind of that intangible thing that you guys are speaking about, Captain Odegaard, is just knowing that his presence, so to say, again, tongue in cheek, the whole aura thing, like is it just having the body on the field, knowing that Odegaard's there, and just having that, I guess, confidence and build up and partnership, if you will, where players just kind of instinctively could move, knowing that the ball is going to reach their feet, versus if it's a Waneri, super talented, but maybe doesn't have that same rapport. Do you think there's something to that, or is it all? Am I making things up and running in circles in my own head here, Kelly?
No, I think you're right, Mike. I think from a tangible perspective, Waneri is the closest analog within our squad of what Odegaard does, and he plays in the same position. He's the same footedness, but as far as like integrating teammates and everything, he's more at this point. I mean, he's fucking 17 years old. He's more of an individualist, I think, that will be a more of a metronome. So he's going to pass and make easy passes and look for stuff to either the clearer chances to create or try to create shots for himself. That's his remit. That's staying within himself. Like, again, Odegaard has this galaxy brain. He has every single player. He has every single coach connected to him, and he has every single player connected to him. He's the unquestioned center of Arsenal's universe. Like, if you zoomed out and did like an abstract piece of art, it would be Odegaard in the middle, and there's a bunch of tethers to Odegaard, and that's everything. Yeah, everything else just goes back to him. And so, but what I will say, and this is something that I think Clive and Elliot over at AVP have done a good job of pointing out, that when Odegaard plays, because we're set up to play with Odegaard, it makes it easier for us to play with Waneri because he plays in a similar way in similar areas. So Waneri gets more minutes when Odegaard is here, because you're not having to fuck around with a two-striker thing or to like screw up the patterns of play. And I try to hammer that a lot when I watch things, like, why is this happening? Like, why are we doing it? Especially when something that's like, it's pissing me off because we keep doing the same thing. It's not an accident, something that we are drilling a pattern for a specific reason. It might not be working, but that's the game plan, right? And the reason why Waneri can come into these games and make a difference is because he's coming in and he's occupying the same positions as Odegaard, even if he's not doing it exactly the same way. And that's the kind of continuity and patterns that make you able to plug and play and put people in and out and everything. So, but I do think that we are. I mean, Odegaard cannot play. I'm sure Odegaard wants to play for the full 90 or 70 to 80 minutes of every single match we play. But there's going to be, I think, the positive results are in, where Forest is not a fuck around team this year. Like, they're a European place contender this year. And we were comfortable enough with how we were doing things to basically rotate half players and some of the best players that we have in our entire team out and play a different way and be okay, I think, to set up this game against Sporting. And I think that we probably are going to see some of that. And if Odegaard is flagging or is in the red, I mean, he's done enough. Even if he's not playing 90 minutes, like, go out there and play 50 minutes, give us 55 to 60 minutes, and then Odegaard can come in after that. If we're playing a weak league game at home, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, we're in that spot now where it's like we are making adjustments now to how we are going to manage these things, and we're not having all of our eggs in this basket, or just rolling out plan A. I think Arteta is realizing that that's not a sustainable thing for fitness. And a lot of our play patterns depend on being fit and rested, because we told everybody to fuck off in that international break, and we came out looking like a different club because we didn't have to. It's Odegaard or Odegaard didn't get his ass kicked against fucking Albania, and Saka wasn't running doggies against San Marino for no reason at all.
Yeah.
As you mentioned you mentioned Saka. Look, man, the English media. I'm always at odds with them, so to say.
Mhm.
But I did think it was a tad bit of a shitty question to ask Arteta about. He said English fans want to know, in what condition Saka was in or something, because he played so brilliant versus Forest. He played the full 90 minutes or thereabout, having missed out on the English team. And, he kind of made reference to what Harry Kane had brought up. And, Arteta just very, chill, just said we could send the MRI. They know this. Everything's been communicated. But I did think it was a little bit of a shitty question to ask. Of Ken, I know that I'm not English, but I'll say this as a Mexican Guatemalan that was born in America. I have 3 countries to not give a shit about. And I don't give a shit about any of the 3. Like, I kind of look at it like, nah, man, like I'm a big believer that these players are playing a lot of football. And Tom Canton came up with like a very something really, really simple that I'm surprised they have never been thought about before. And it was that first international break when we lost. I think it might have been Odegaard that we lost that one on the first one. But he suggested like, hey man, just simple rule. If the player participated in a summer tournament, he's not eligible for call-up for the first international break of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was so simple. Like, yeah, sure, just give them those 2 weeks off because they didn't get the rest that every single other player got over the summer. So I digress a little bit as we've been digressing the entire night. I do want to bring it back to Trossard. Chris, so I think I say often that we all have our own personal bias on how we rate players. It's kind of like we will talk about Gabriel Jesus, right? And I'm like, he's already on the naughty list for me. So there's plenty of people that say he played well versus Nottingham Forest, right? And I'm at the point where like, okay, just put the ball in the net. I will say Trossard is kind of in that bracket where maybe he's a victim of the expectations that he created coming in on certain games towards the end and always managing to score. And I think people just assumed, hey, he's going to start a game and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to continue to score. Here's where I'm going to try to offer and try to, convince supporters out there to have a little bit more sympathy. And I'm going to tie my bias theory into this is I generally think that like if you grabbed Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, Saka, whoever it was, and ask him to play on the right, play on as false 9, play at left 8, also play on the left wing in different situations in different games, I think more than one person would pop out and say, well, holy shit, let him play in his right position. And Trossard, man, say what you want. And, it's kind of amazing that, and we have this a lot going on at our club. Like, Raya recently said, my career started when I signed for Arsenal. But say what you want. Like, Trossard left Brighton because he was bumping heads with the manager. And apparently, according to some Brighton fans, he was a little bit of a bad egg. And here he is where, like, you want me to be a sub, boss? I'll be a sub. I would like to start. But if you want me to start at false 9, I will. You want me to play left? I will. Right? Sure. Midfield, why not? And we have this player that ends up playing in multiple different positions, doing multiple different roles. And sure, maybe he's not on the score sheet every single time, Chris, but I don't know. I see value. So I value Trossard a lot, way past the goal and assisting. And which is funny because I'm calling myself out too, because I'm a supporter and I'm biased. I've now gone too far with Gabriel Jesus, where like I'm like, no, you need to woe me back into your corner. So Trossard got on the score sheet on a brilliant shot from Merino from outside. He got at the end of the header. He didn't get on the score sheet versus Forest, but he did get to play left back there. So how are you liking Trossard right now? I mean, is your temperature pretty chill with him? Are you content with the numbers that his output that he's currently doing, or are you kind of like we kind of need to upgrade on him at this point?
I think he's the perfect squad player because he tends to do better when he comes off the bench and gives you that kind of super sub 20, 25 minutes off the bench. I think it's easier to get frustrated when the left side for a lot of this season hasn't been working. And you can even see if you look at stats of how often our attack goes up the right side versus the left side, that, you know, we are very right-sided biased right now because I think we're not getting a lot of tune out of the left side. So as a squad player, I'm happy. The problem is I don't know if Trossard is happy as a squad player. And he certainly doesn't hide his body language about, and maybe we're all reading too much into it, but it certainly appears to me that he is a guy that wants to be a starter more often than not. So our understanding of that sort of dynamic internally between him and Arteta is unknown to us. But if he's happy being a squad player, I'm certainly happy to have him at the squad, at the club. I think it's when we have to rely on a guy like him at his age, 29, at what we're trying to achieve right now, I don't think he's quite at the level, to be honest. But I also am not sure Martinelli is either. And I know he's younger and maybe has room to grow, whereas I think Trossard is obviously the finished article and will only probably regress from here. I think if we didn't have questions about that left side, I think we'd be perfectly happy. I'd be perfectly happy. Let me speak for myself. With him, I think though you have to at least pay a little bit of attention to the fact that he may not be a player who's completely satisfied with his role, even if we might be. And if he's not willing to play that role that you need him to play, because again, I don't think he's a nailed-on starter in a team like Arsenal that is trying to win major trophies. But he's a fantastic squad player. He's like one of the best players you could think of to bring off the bench in most games. If he's not satisfied with that position, you probably need to move him on at some point. So yeah, it's a roundabout way of saying, Mike, that I'm happy with his role, but I don't know if he's happy with his role. And if he's not happy with his role, there's only so much we're going to be able to get out of him, because unhappy footballers, as we've seen with Jesus, don't make in the long term very good results oriented footballers, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's also the Saudi league links with him, and am I confused to say he's also on the contract negotiation train?
That's what we had heard.
Because he was on an exceptionally long contract either, isn't he? End of the season after, so next season he has one more year left in his contract, right? He did one of those like a 3.5 or a 4.5 or something.
It says looks like contract expires summer of 2026, so 2 years from now.
Okay,
1.5 from now.
Yeah, so basically it's shit or get off the pot for us. So he'll either sign an extension, or I think more likely he'll be sold either in January or the summer. But it depends on what else we do. Because I kind of agree that he thinks that he should start, and I don't think he's necessarily on. Like, he could be a starter at a team like Brighton. Like, I don't know. He's been incredibly useful, and when he's got his shooting boots on, he's an incredibly helpful player who kind of plays outside the system. I think he's just kind of sometimes like square pegs are helpful to you because they do something completely different, individualistic. I think that the team is really synced up, and he's a little bit of an outsider, and it works just fine when he's scoring goals, but he hasn't been scoring goals this year. So his inability to do the other stuff that is very team oriented shows a little bit more. And if he goes and from this point on, he bangs in eight or 9 goals in all comps throughout the end of the year, I'll be forgiven and people won't care anymore. It's just he's not scoring at the same frequency. And again, he's kind of a sour little shit too. Like, he really is. Like, he's not a very pleasant guy, and I don't imagine he's like a super pleasant person to be around in the dressing room either. He's just kind of a crabby little shit, which I'm sure he uses to like power himself. But it's also
Alex during training.
Yeah, it's also like we're also the club that like we signed Odegaard and then signed Kai Havertz, and now they're the best friends that anybody ever had. Like, so there's a lot of like like even Raheem Sterling sits there next to like Monieri, and they're like talking and chatting up and like talking about stuff the entire, like there's an awful lot of good vibes in the camp. And he strikes me as somebody, and this is maybe just me being overtly sensitive to this type of stuff, but he strikes me as somebody that's like, what do you know about Leo? What kind of music does Leo listen to? And everybody's like, I don't know. Like, what does Leo like to do? He plays football. like I don't think he's somebody he's a little, not mercenary is the wrong, but he's more of a mercenary. This is his job, and he's here to do a job, and he's here to do the best he can to get paid as much money as he possibly can. And so long as that jives with his playing time and his production, he's fine. But the second that balance goes off, he's probably batting his eyes. And again, if he can go and cash in and make $400,000 a week tax free and go to Saudi for a couple of years, at this stage in his career, it's going to be the last big payday he gets. So I get it. And if somebody wants to pay us $30 million for him that we can reinvest in somebody that's going to take Martinelli's shirt off his back, then I'm totally fine with that too.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it, to say the very least. Gabriel Jesus' performance versus Forest. A lot of the I'm going to say physically there, getting there. I feel like he's looking a little bit physically better. Body language, which is something like it's really incredibly hard to judge, but he seems more up for it, if that makes any sense. Again, just pure speculation from somebody that's watching from thousands and thousands miles away on TV. I think he's maybe growing in confidence with his body, and that's what it is. I think he has confidence maybe in his footballing ability, but maybe to overcome such a long period of injury, maybe you kind of doubt your body and what it can do. But he was incredibly active. So, I'm not going to say he can't or won't play a part in this season, but I do kind of want him to get, the monkey off his back and score a goal, preferably in the league or the Champions League, because he did score, right? But it was like a cup game, league cup game, if I'm not mistaken. League Cup,
I think. Yeah.
And then we had one other game in which Chris, you and I discussed that it would be like a perfect game. Not with Kelly. It was a perfect game for him to start. It was a home game. Maybe it was Leicester City. And, he had like an okay outing, nothing glorious. But yeah, it's just one of those things, man, where I'm at the point with him. And I think a lot of it is expectations almost. Like, like I used to tell you guys, Eddie Nketiah is okay for being a squad player, running around and potentially nicking a goal via tap-in. And Gabriel Jesus, my expectation for him, because I believe he's such a considerably better footballer than Eddie Nketiah. Hot take there, okay. I just have higher expectations. Maybe. And I guess I compare him to Kai Havertz, and I'm like, well, if Kai Havertz could run his ass off and still manage to find himself in a position to tap a ball in off of a timber cross, what is it that Gabriel Jesus got going on that he's not capable of doing? So I mean, how is the future bright for him at the club, or are you going to put him on the Trossard list, so to say?
He's much lower than on the Trossard list than Trossard is. But Clive made the point that he was outside of like the first 3 months when he was at the club, where he was scoring quite a lot. We were thinking, boy, this is a guy that's reinvented himself. He was never a prodigious scorer at City, but he seemed to be the guy that we needed, and he was for a time at Arsenal. But what he always did was he would always, despite his size, be able to hold up the ball, be able to make the defense take a couple steps back. He was really good at retaining the ball. He was really lively, really good dribbling in close quarters, always available, running from side to side, pressing like a maniac. Like, he would do all those things, and I just don't see that. Still, I don't see that Gabriel Jesus that we saw when he first arrived. And I said this before in the pod a couple pods ago, which was now a couple months ago, but he strikes me as a guy who wants to be the main man. And I think that's been his problem at Brazil, and Abreu can tell us whether that's true or not. And he's never kind of really achieved that in the Brazilian team. And he was maybe that, or was one of those guys at City for a time. And that's why, he was on side, and he was playing well, and he was that guy when he first arrived at Arsenal. But as soon as he got a little bit of competition, and Kai Havertz brought that last year, I don't think that it's by coincidence that, in addition to his injury, that his form dipped. And I think when he knows he's not the guy and he has to fight for it, and he doesn't necessarily believe that he can get there, and he's an emotional guy too, I think he suffers. And I think, as much as I'd like to rely on him, he is on $250K a week or whatever it is. He's not creating the output, nor is he really doing all the other things outside of the output that is providing value to us. So while I think if he wasn't on $250K, I'd like probably to see him move on and to invest that money somewhere else. I just don't know who's going to pay for him, because there's not very many clubs in world football that can afford $250K. And those that do probably aren't going to make him the main guy. They probably already have the main guy. So I don't know. We might have to take a loss on him. We might have to take a cut deal for him. He's not going to decrease his wages to go anywhere else, because that's most of ballers aren't willing to do that. So either Arteta has to reinvent him, figure out a way for him to add value to the squad, pump up his confidence, help him see that he still has something to add here and get the output we need, or figure out someone who wants him. And I just don't know who that is. I don't know if that's a Juventus or a PSG or I don't know, a lower level team in the Premier League who might be able to afford some of those wages. But right now I can't see a club where he might go who's going to afford those wages. So we might be stuck with him for a while.
How much, or how many years does he have? 2 more years, probably, right?
I'm looking it up right now.
Summer 27, I would assume.
What's funny is I would have definitely liked him at Milan, but Milan already invested on the money laundering machine that is Alvaro Morata. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Mike's pet project is that Alvaro Morata is just like a front for drug money and gangsters, because of he's cost like £3 billion in transfer weight, and he's moved between basically some of the biggest clubs in the world a bunch of times.
If somebody could find me an intangible, something to hold on to as a reason, statistically speaking, as to why he's moved around for so much money, I'm willing to show me numbers. Okay, just prove it to me that he's worth that much money. That's all I'm saying.
That many teams over that long a period of time with that few of goal scoring. I think you might be onto something.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah.
The Jesus thing is really tough, because it's just he and Zinchenko came in and were big culture changers, and then the club and the manager, especially because the manager didn't know he was going to be yet. So when he's making those purchases, it's hard to purchase your ideal player when you don't know what kind of manager's team you're going to have. And the team just moved away from them. And Chris, I agree. I think Jesus is a big ego. He's a very emotional guy, and he's going to be well aware of being shifted back in the pecking order. And I agree. I don't see the heart anymore. I think there's some obvious physical decline related to his knee injury. And I don't think he has the snap and pop and the some of the outstanding physicals anymore. And so that's a big problem. But I think he's not invested. I think he's taking care of himself for his next move. But what he doesn't get is that unless he starts fucking playing better, he's not going to get a move. He's going to do the Thomas Partey thing, and he's going to be sitting here, and he's going to be an Arsenal depth piece, because at some point there's got to be some sort of transfer fee to offset the amortization of his yearly payment, and somebody's going to have to take on his wages. Now, again, I do think there's places for him in Italy and France and Spain. I think there's plenty of top 4 to 6-ish clubs in all of those leagues that would definitely take Jesus, and he'd be one of their better players. It's just when you get into that 200 plus grand a week range, you either have to renegotiate a contract at more reasonable wages, or you need to. They're just not going to take you. It's going to be a loan. It's going to be buy options. It's going to be, you're going to, I don't think it's in the player or Arsenal's best interest to loan army him and get a nominal loan fee for him going out temporarily to other clubs. That's a really, really high risk of that failing and him coming back with even less time on his contract and having less value. and then ended up staying his last year anyway. So I don't know, man. It's one of those that's a little bit heartbreaking because that knee injury and going to the World Cup is proved to be a massive mistake for him. And to Mike's anger with blood gloves, dude, he's obviously has always prioritized. Yeah,
anger.
He's always prioritized his international career, and it's had a massive detrimental effect to his club career. And he's somebody who likes to write the checks, but doesn't like to pay up, I think, when they bounce. And he's kind of a big baby. And when you got a big kid playing for you, when you love their energy and enthusiasm when they're up, but when they don't take responsibility for their, like we all have kids here. It's really fun playing with your kids. And it's fun when they have a carefree attitude and they just want to run around and scream in the sun and like have a great day on a Saturday. But when they don't clean up their fucking mess, it's really annoying. Like that's kind of where we are with Gabriel Jesus. I think he's kind of a big kid and he's not a particularly mature person or a footballer. And so we're getting crabby Jesus going through his teen years with Arsenal here and huffing and puffing and not cleaning his room. And so nobody's having a great time now. And he's got to either start cleaning his fucking room or he's got to go live with stepmom now. We're at that spot.
All right, fair enough. I think we had the opportunity to talk about the majority of some of the.
Breo didn't like that.
Yeah, Video didn't like that. No, Video breaks my heart. He said, for fuck's sake. Yeah, I don't think his stock isn't like as low as. Excuse me.
It's like Mike's in California, so this could mean anything. Are the Japanese attacking? Are they on the shores, Mike?
Silver alert. Missing or endangered adult. So you guys are good. So that's good to know.
I'm still here.
Our favorite thing is when we have this one guy in our friend group that he's like 5 years older than everybody else. And when we get one of those alerts for like the elderly people in the group, everybody's like, "Izzy, are you okay?" And he's not remotely close to being elderly yet, but we always bash him for being the oldest guy in the group. So we all get the alerts and we all rush to get the joke in, like who's going to be first to call the old Izzy old is what we do.
We don't have Amber alerts for adults in Minnesota. We just it's like it must be a Viking thing in Minnesota. We just let them wander off into the snow and die because it was their time. We don't alert anybody. They're just gone.
Yeah,
that's too nice.
Gone with the snow. Gabriel Jesus' stock isn't as low as Sami Lakanga, so it's not like I don't think I don't exactly. I don't think it's going to be a situation in which nobody's going to want to buy him. I think there's a market for him to some extent. I was going to say we didn't talk too much about Saliba and Gabriel, but I have a feeling that we're going to talk about him a little bit because I'm going to ask you two about Gyokeres and his performance today because he's one of those players that he's tearing up Europe. Sporting hasn't lost a game in Portugal at that stadium in 18 months, I believe, but he did a no-show today practically, and there's a contributing factor to that, and I think we have two elite world-class center backs, and yes, I am chucking in, as you guys know well, I am fully chucking in Gabriel Magalhaes in that. He's a beast in his own way, and today he either tried to be funny and did it wrong. He either tried to emulate it and forgot what the fuck the celebration was. I don't know what it was. Part of me thought it was he was going to do the monkey thing, like okay, Gyokeres does this, the thing, his mouth. He's going to do this. I was just waiting for somebody else to cover their ears, like those monkeys that do the three poses. But Gyokeres watch for my two co-hosts who follow these type of players a whole lot more than me. I mean, were you guys impressed? Were you guys sympathetic of the fact that he's going up against Saliba and Gabriel? Like, what was your take home? Like, do you walk away from that game and say, yeah, he's still worth 80 to 90 mil?
Do you want to answer that? I want me to answer that, Kelly.
I can do first, and you can clean up whatever my rambling mess is going to be. I was actually impressed when he played. So I think it's informative or it's instructive that he's basically forced to run channels on his own. Like that's part of their playing style. here's what I came away with generally. He does not play against guys like Gabriel and Saliba very often. And you can make a very compelling argument that Gabriel and Saliba are two of the best 6 to 7 center backs in the entire world, and they play on the same team. And the supporting cast around, we also had, again, our first choice left back, first choice right back for this season. That's a really fucking difficult assignment, especially when they don't have a lot of support. Like, a lot of their offensive thrust is them whacking the ball into a channel, having Gyokeres go in there and bounce off of a couple players and have to create a shot for himself or for somebody else. That's a really difficult assignment. It's an easier assignment when you're playing guys that are making $20 an hour playing in Portugal a lot, right? But it's not like he just did it there. He's done it in Europe too. He's done it against the better teams, because the top 4 teams in Portugal are outstanding clubs, right? Those are really, really good clubs. It's like if Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, and City, and then it was like we were playing against the bottom half of league of the championship and the top half of League One. Like, that's the type of talent gap there is between the elite teams in Portugal and the rest of the teams that make up the Portuguese first league. So you can like flat track them. My opinion of him is that he physically really, really what I expected. Really strong, robust, held up to challenge as well. He creates his own shot brilliantly. Like, he had that shot at the end that I think that when he wasn't playing, after I think Gabriel came off, and so he's playing against a normal center back.
Yeah, against Kivior.
He in the 80-something minute when he's been running his ass off the whole time, he beat Saliba to the ball, turned him, ran Kivior with the ball, and absolutely fucking uncorked a rocket that I think Raya got a fingertip to put it on the post. That was a great passage of play, and he would turn and snap into some of these shots and everything. So I understand where the hype is. He's obviously an incredibly physically gifted player. He doesn't have a lot of quick explosive speed, but his downhill sprinting and his retention is really good. He has a fucking outlandishly hard shot on him, and he's obviously a natural finisher. He was coming up against, he had very, very little service and very little support, and he was playing against players. And again, with Gabriel's celebration, that was not a mistake. That was him making fun of the celebration and pointing out to everybody, it's like, hey, yeah, I'm a defender, and I shut you down, and I just scored. And again, it all goes back and forth. The sporting people have pointed this out, that Granit Xhaka, when he was here, he did the celebration, I think, for his kid or his nephew or something like that. And so in Sporting 1, they did that celebration to kind of mock Xhaka. So I think it's a little bit there's a little bit of team talk, locker room stuff happening there to kind of stick it to him. But I mean, I guess he's about what I expected. He's somebody who has elite traits that are very, very useful, but he's not a brilliant footballer. He does the things that he does very well. And if you dropped him in the Premier League, I think he scores 15, 18, 20 goals in his first year. But he's not, as far as a work ethic player, and as far as we'll do everything and go all over the place player, and kind of the Mikel Arteta archetype, he's not Havertz, he's not Odegaard, he's not Ben White, he's not some of these archetypal Mikel Arteta players. But if I really wouldn't be happy if he went and played for Chelsea or Aston Villa or something like that. I wouldn't be happy if he went there, because I think he's going to score a lot of goals, because I saw a lot of the raw materials and a lot of that. I'm going to create my own shot and just fucking leather my foot through this ball and make it really hard on you. I saw a lot of that stuff that I like from him. So he's a pure center forward, which doesn't work well with our system, but man, he can go to a bigger team in a bigger league and score a lot of goals. He definitely can. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you, Steve-O's not convinced at all, especially for that price. And Saskia Gudris just absolutely not a big fan of the man. I think Saskia Gudris, being a Canadian or living over there himself, is a big fan of Jonathan
He's
David.
a big Jonathan David guy, right?
Yeah, I'm just cracking up, just Coventry 80 million clown or a free time Canadian Haitian Filet Iceman. We know it's better.
Where's our resident Swede in the chat to tell us that he's the next coming of Ibrahimovic? You said
absolutely loving this man.
You said it well, Kelly. I think. I mean, I haven't, to be honest, watched a ton of Sporting.
We literally aren't able to. There's no US
Unless it's on
distribution
Champions
that
League,
matches.
right? So
It's CL and highlights is all we got.
So I've watched a lot of highlights just because he's been linked to us. And if you just I just was watching the highlights as you were talking from his goals this year. And it's almost exclusively, if it's not a penalty, it's a goal in transition where he doesn't have a set defense that he's having to attack on, or if he's having to play a 1-2. In fact, I didn't see any goals where he's playing a 1-2 with someone in tight spaces and curling a shot in traffic. Or beating a guy on the dribble, in traffic. So when I look at the kinds of goals that we have to score at Arsenal, where we face often the lowest blocks in the league on purpose, that's how teams play against us, and they hope to counter us. I think that's my concern in putting that kind of money into a guy like that, who hasn't had to play that way, where he's made a living on being really, really, really clinical in transition. That's certainly a kind of striker that you could have at Arsenal, and we could orient our squad and our style of play around that. But for £100 million, you have to be really certain. And I don't know. I don't see teams giving us that kind of space to be able to operate like he does at Sporting. So he's really clinical. I just looked up. He's outperformed XG in the last 2 years at Sporting by a fairly decent margin. So he clearly outperforms what is expected, which means he's highly clinical. And I think he's shown it over the long period of time, where that's not a fluke. That's actually part of his game. And as you said, he leathers the ball. He's really, really, really accurate, and he hits it really, really hard. So in that case, he's a little bit like Haaland, and it's kind of a lazy comparison, but Haaland doesn't do a lot of the stuff either, right? He doesn't do a lot of the off the ball stuff. He doesn't, they don't get a lot of space in transition. They've got to score a lot of their goals with a lot of defenders around. So sometimes you're that clinical where you can play in any system, but given that he hasn't done it in a major league, in a top 5 league, and given that he's only really done the majority of his goals in transition or one-on-one versus the keeper or penalties, there's just a lot of, for me, there's too many unknowns to splash that kind of cash for a club like Arsenal, where if you miss on £100 million player, you're kind of screwed for the next couple of seasons, especially at an important position like striker. I said it, I think I posted it somewhere on Twitter. Maybe it was a response to someone. I think I'd rather take the gamble on Isak for that price, because at least with Isak, he can play in transition in big spaces, but he also is really, really good in small spaces too. And I think a lot of our best players, because of the way in which we're defended, are small space players. And I think he can do both. He's just a more rounded player. And I think while he may not be quite as clinical, I think he's a better fit for how we play.
Yep, I would agree with that. And here's what I will say. I really don't want Gyokeres to go to Manchester United.
Nope, I don't either.
Because they are going to play a lot on the counter, and those big spaces that we're talking about, there's going to be lots and lots of goals scored by him in that type of setup. And
if we were City, we would just buy him so that nobody else could buy him. That's what we would do. But
I think you guys sealed his fate. Now he's off to United.
Well, that's the problem. Gabriel probably pretty much made him off the table, if he ever was on the table for Arsenal. Now he really is. Somebody's going to go all in for him. It'll probably be United, to be honest.
I would be shocked if it's not United.
Yeah, I agree.
I was telling Chris a little earlier, I can't have Isaac being bought and succeeding at Arsenal because I have priors with him. If you look up my tweets, I got plenty of tweets saying he's not good enough for the English Premier League.
No.
I can't have him be.
Better delete those.
It's not great for us, though, that Newcastle fucking hates us and doesn't want to deal with us. And I think they have some like they were in for Tierney and then told us to fuck off. I don't think Newcastle likes us, and he's their most valuable asset. And with all the PSR and like spending caps and stuff, they can't replace him. If they sold him, they would not be able to replace him. So if we want any sort of hack at Isak, we really need to hope that they spiral and finish at the back end or outside of European places. And he just tells them to get fucked, and I'm not going to sign a new contract, so you have to sell me. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. It's even like we've talked about, like Šeško is a big space player. Like physically, he's very similar to he's like a turbocharged Havertz, but he has nowhere near the work ethic or technique. Mm-hmm. And he's going to cost 150% or more of his value because of his potential. And Leipzig are very, very good sellers. So like,
You don't think there's like a gentleman agreement? You know, like we all know that the release clause came and went, but was the release clause like 60? Right?
yeah, I'm sure Leipzig would be thrilled to sell him for 70, but
Yeah.
I think that's a Hoyland gamble. I think that's that same price point, and that's that same
Okay.
we are buying physical potential without the similar output, and we'll see what develops here. And I think we're in a much better and a much healthier situation for a young player to go to. But like Hoyland was playing at Atalanta not too long ago, and Atalanta are famous for bringing up players and creating really elite professionals out of raw talent. And he has fucking sucked for Manchester. Like he is not a good player for Manchester United. He's inconsistent. He's injured all the time. Like he is a physical talent that is not developed basically at all in the 2 years. He's the exact same player he walked in the door at United. And the United suck, I understand, and like we're better than them, but like
Fair.
I think I like Šeško a lot, and if the recruiting staff and Arteta view him as somebody who they can use and who's going to develop into something in like 12 to 18 months that's going to be worthwhile, I believe them. But man, I mean, it's just as much as I want to see that motherfucker just running huge 80-yard sprints and socking top 90 shots, like what happens when is he going to do what Kai Havertz does when he hasn't touched the ball in 10 minutes and is just relentlessly pressing like an insane person?
Yeah.
And he's going to drop back and defend? And is he going to like go to the right wing and allow Bukayo Saka to play center forward for him? Like, there's not a lot of mentality. I think the reason why Havertz works so well in our system is that there's very, very few players that talented and that fit that are willing to do the things he's willing to do.
He's fueled by hate of Chelsea. And
yeah, he does hate Chelsea. That's very, very helpful.
He's like fueled by them.
He really wants to kill everybody who's mentioned Chelsea, even though he literally won a Champions League for them. He fucking hates Chelsea, and so maybe that's enough. To
Here.
Yeah, I mean, if I was playing, I'd hate Chelsea too. That'd probably be enough to power me as well. But
like I'll tell you this, man, and I'm not trying to seek sympathy for this guy, but he's like less apologetic than Robin van Persie.
Oh my god, he doesn't give a fuck. He openly dislikes them. His best friend is Martin Odegaard.
He laughed and is like, and by the way, double birds to you motherfuckers on the way out. Like
he literally. Well, they interviewed him after. He says he cried when we didn't win the title last year.
Yeah,
and he literally said it would mean more to him than winning a Champions League.
Yeah, I know he's
like he does not fucking care. Like he's just like
he's gonna be retired like Van Persie, thinking they're gonna interview him and be like, I don't think I could work for for Chelsea. I'm over it, but the Chelsea supporters aren't over it. That's going to be him 10, 15 years from now.
But I think he is one of those rare guys that, again, like we're talking about Bergkamp, the old Bergkamp quote is like, you start supporting a club because you find a piece of yourself there. Like he's home here now and he doesn't want to go anywhere. And that means that he will do things for Arsenal that he will not do anywhere else. And will Šeško be a guy who does that? Will he do that? Is that something that he comes in and goes, he totally gets the program. It's like, all right, it's time for me as an elite prospect who's been the dude my entire life. I'm going to go start doing fucking pressing runs like a psycho for Mikel Arteta and for Arsenal because I love it here and I want to die for this club. Like there's not a lot of Odegaards and a lot of Havertzes out there that have the requisite talent to match that. Like if the sergeant tells me to go over the wall, I'm going to do it and not think about it. Like there's not a lot of players like that. And I think that, I guess maybe even like, this is me pulling in tangents here, but like Edu and Arteta are really good identifying those elite players that will do that shit for them. And they've done a really good job of vetting personalities that will like basically like die for the club. Like there's not a lot of there's not a lot of those guys, a lot of Ben Whites out there that'll play with a knee problem for like 18 months and not tell you he's hurt. And you have to force them to sit down. Like there's not a lot of Havertz that are, and like a lot of Odegaards that are some of the, maybe a top 10 player in the entire world that's like running they're up by 4 goals away in the Champions League and he's sprinting, killing himself to try to get another goal. Like that's not, I think it's necessary to accomplish what our club wants to accomplish. And it's really hard to find the balance between people that are like that and people who are talented enough to be able to play with the players that were here. and we've done an extraordinary job of locating that. And I think the culture is very, very strong within the club to create that. But I can't identify that. You know what I mean? Like we don't know what's in Benjamin Šeško's heart and soul, and we don't know what's in Alexander Ishak's heart and soul, and we don't know if Gyokeres comes in here and will lose 10 pounds in a month so that he can run more and will press. Like we don't know what's in these guys' hearts, and so that's something that I'm very interested to see because I think we need another elite forward here, but I don't know who it is, and I'm very excited to see it. And I'm really, really hoping whoever we pick doesn't do the Gabby Jesus attitude where he's huffing and puffing and it's like, Mom, I don't want to come out of my room now. Fuck you. We need to stop with that. We can't handle any more of those.
No,
Why not both guys?
There's reason to be optimistic even without Edu. I'm sure they have a long list of names.
Targets. Yeah.
There are clearly lots of people who are willing to give their career to Mikel Arteta, and probably again, like Kai Havertz, hate where they are and hate everybody around them. And it's like, nope, I want to go home. I always talk about that. It's like when players reach a certain level of fame and money, they want to go home.
Yep.
And they want to feel like home, and they will fall in line to what their family is doing to be home and fit in at home. And that's the secret sauce in figuring out who's going to do all that shit, because a lot of players won't.
Yeah, I'm reading between the lines for the live chat. I'm starting to think they don't really like Gyokeres much, especially that Moss guy.
I think it's easy to, if you've only seen him play or seen very little of him play and you've only seen him play today, to think he's not that good. But Kelly said it spot on. He came up against maybe the best partnership center back duo in the world today, and they're really good at 1v1 defending and really, really good in transition. And that's where he thrives. So.
Well, that's the brilliant thing about being me and not watching football is I have no preconception of any of these players. I literally know Retegi more because of he's playing at Atlanta right now because Kelly brings him so much. But I've seen more Retegi than I have Šeško, Jonathan David, probably even Isaac and Gyokeres all combined. So thanks to Kelly. So I mean, you could sign whoever the heck you want. You know what it's going to be, Kelly? Surprise, Morata, 50 mil.
he's another 50 million move from them.
Oh, look at that! He moved again. Holy shit! Yeah, just watch it. It's gonna happen. Yeah,
some cartel is sponsoring him. I'm more or less in your agreements. Oh, he won again to another big club from this big club.
He's gonna be named in the David Coote investigation. That's what I'm waiting for.
The Krusty the Clown thing where he's obviously reading out of cue cards. What does that say? 50 million for Morata. Okay, this is how his death.
All right, we're gonna end the podcast there, man. I will say shout out to Digi Scott, who is not active much on Twitter or doesn't have a Twitter account, but in the middle of the podcast, when I received the alert, I opened up Blue Sky, which my co-host refused to create. But I'm jumping ship. And I'm not jumping ship. I'm kind of going back and forth, so to say. And I got to tell you, it's slightly weird jumping into a new platform when you don't have a lot of followers, because I'm I tweet or whatever the fucking verb you want to call
sky it.
Yeah, I sky it, if you will. But
actually, hold on.
Dude, did you also think about that?
You ski it according to
think about that Lil Jon song?
Yeah,
yeah.
Basically, when you're on Blue Sky, you ski everywhere, Mike.
Our squad fucked up my day because I had that just rolling around in my head the entire flipping day, bro.
Oh my god!
But did you start? He's incredibly active on Blue Sky. Actually, not so much on Twitter, or I don't think he does Twitter at all. But he I noticed that I had a DM from him, and he goes, "I know Nap's not on here, so I'm just tagging you in things that I want you to discuss, just as an idea for the pod." And sure enough, nice. It was and it was the impact of Odegaard on the team, which we discussed, and Ethan would narrate. I'm like, hey, I just got back to him, surprise, dude. Look at that, don't worry, Digi Scott. By the time you listen to this, you're gonna be like, hey, they spoke about it, and you got a shout out at the very end. So, if any of you guys are crazy enough to start a Blue Sky account, there are a decent amount of Arsenal accounts going over there, but I don't think they're fully removed from Twitter. But that's
Find
just
me on
neither here nor
Friendster, Phil. Everybody.
Yeah, so you could find me on Instagram, Threads,
Connect to you.
Facebook, Truth Social. You can find me there. Blue
Truth
Sky,
MySpace.
Twitter, MySpace. Oh, MySpace. Yeah, Abadel, your top. What was MySpace too? Like top 7, top 8 friends, whatever the fuck the odd number
Yeah.
one.
Wow.
Abadel's making the
I
list.
have the
for
Black
sure.
Eyed Peas on a MIDI file in the background of my
Yeah.
MySpace page.
All right, boys. Let's end this podcast right now. We'll be back next Tuesday. All things considered, we will be talking about the Arsenal and hopefully another win. I already lost.
Against West Ham.
Huh?
Against West Ham.
It was West Ham away. Thank you. That should be good fun with my matey Wesley, who is a
scored
West
the
Ham
goal
supporter.
for West Ham in their win?
Who versus
The winner.
versus Newcastle?
Yes.
Fuck if I know, Kelly.
I didn't watch the game.
My priors, deep prior.
You have any idea how many priors you
It's
have?
like 400 priors.
It could be anybody, Kelly.
The Mexican guy.
Well, no, it wasn't Alvarez. I know that much
Darn.
for sure. Because somebody would have.
Manchester United right back that I'm having.
Oh,
yeah.
Wan-Bissaka scored for the
Wan-Bissaka,
first time like
yeah.
in 8 years.
like the first time in like 5 years, Wan-Bissaka scored a goal.
Yeah.
He just needed to leave Manchester.
Abadel
and
was
then 2
still
years later.
using AOL chat.
He's a team.
Hey, live chat, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Any support, as Abadel pointed out and guilted us a few times, we haven't podcast for 20 flipping days. I can't even believe that. Doesn't feel that way, but holy shit, 20 days, there it is.
I drank
Stay
it
humble,
for
eh?
20 days.
Stay humble. You find me at Mike Hers FC on Twitter and just Mike Hers on Blue Sky, huh? You can find Chris on West Suburban AFC bantering the holy shit out of rival fans, and of course Kelly, South Metro AFC, just arguing with people about anything and everything, and just filling your timelines with the most obscure footballers.
Lazio in 1 point off the Serie A lead with a bullet. 7 wins in a row.
Wow.
And Lazio's Twitter account admin. I don't think I could say those words because of YouTube algorithms, but go look up like Lazio on Twitter and see what they did to banter off Roma. Pretty fucked up, but pretty hilarious if you have a dark sense of humor. So
They are
Ladies and
not
gentlemen.
good people over there, I don't think.
they're not good people over there. I think that's pretty accurate. All right. Cheers, chat. Thank you so much for joining. Peace.
Right foot this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketty. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.